Yep, that's the thing.
It's your thing.
It's the blues
Your
metal,
identity.
like a license plate, right?
Yeah, it's
I
like,
know, man.
It just doesn't exist.
Okay, now I'm definitely warmed up for sure, no doubt. Even breaking a sweat, which is good, so that's perfect.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning.
Perfect.
So this thought comes to mind after seeing you play, which is absolutely out of this world. So it's just kind of this interesting idea. If I'm a kid,
Right.
I'm just starting out, I see Eric Steckel on social, I'm like, oh my God, I get the buzz.
Right.
Mom gets me a guitar. I'm starting with Mary Had a Little Lamb, but I want to get to that point. Like, what would your advice be to that kid?
My advice is, my honest feeling is anybody can do it. Anybody can get there, but you have to understand really what that means. You have to, it's all sacrifice. It's sacrifice. You have to like for instance, I'm a 6 or 7 year old kid. I'm playing, and if I look out my window and I see a couple of my buddies out in the street, maybe they're playing hockey in the street, and I'm like, man, I want to go out there and join them, yeah. But I'm like, yeah, but I really want to be the next Gary Moore or Eric Clapton. Like, there was always that thing for me of like the want versus the need of like, yeah, I want to go out there and play with my friends, but I need to be a musician. I need, you know what I mean? So that always was stronger for me. That always outweighed any other activity that would take away my time, right? So I would say for the kid who they see a guitar player, maybe it's me, maybe it's someone else, and they go, wow, I want to do that someday. That's great, but you have to really be willing to put in the time that's not fun, like you're going to have to make some sacrifices in your life to be that guy, you know what I mean? Because I don't have a normal life, far from it, right? And I meet a lot of people who they'd love to have the chops and the skills, but they still want their normal life. And I just don't think I've never met anyone, I've been doing this for 25 years, I've never met a normal, extremely talented musician. None. They're all a little off, right? And I think that a lot of people maybe are like, that's a little intimidating for them. You know what I mean? So I think for a young person who sees a guitar player or any musician and wants to says, I want to do that someday, I wish you the best, but be prepared for you're not going to have a normal life. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Can you take us through that sacrifice, your own journey? Like, how did it start? What was your first musical inspiration? What was that moment where you're like, I want to do that? And
it started really young, and I think somewhere even in my parents' like VCR archives, they have footage of me like almost a toddler, and my dad would put on like a cassette tape of the Jimmy Vaughan and Stevie Ray Vaughan album called Family Style that had just come out in the year 1990, which is the year I was born. And there's videos that they took of me, like, as soon as he would put that tape in, I would just, like, start running around the house, like, just, like, freaking out, like, in a good way, So I think for me it started as early as that. But as far as, like, actually getting my hands on an instrument, I was about 7 years old, and my Uncle Dave, who lived in Vermont, we used to do, like, a July 4th visit up to their place all the time, because in July it's beautiful up there in Vermont. And he was not a professional musician. He had a day job, but he played guitar on the side. And during one of my visits up there with the family, I guess I went into his, office space and grabbed one of his guitars, and I had no knowledge of the instrument, only just pretending kind of. But he saw the way I was pretending, and he went and told my dad, we got to get this kid a guitar, because this is, he said something like, most kids pick up a guitar, they don't even know how to hold it right, let alone, and what Dave saw me doing, he's like, man, he's almost there already. He kind of knows how to emulate, like, the guys that I was admiring, So they got me would have been a 1998 black standard Stratocaster, right? And within 2 years of them buying me that guitar, I put out my first album. It's insane. Even when I say it now, it's insane. Because when I was back then doing it, it took me to be into my 30s to appreciate how unique my situation was. Because when I was in the moment doing it, I didn't get why everyone was freaking out. Because I'm like, yeah, I know I'm an 11-year-old kid and I play guitar. I didn't realize that was unusual. You know what I mean? To see a little kid with a full-size guitar on stage, like, but now I get it. I look back at the footage and I go, oh my God, if I walked into a bar and saw this, I'd be like, So I get it now, you know.
So was it just absolute obsession as soon as you got that?
Yeah.
So it was your whole life.
It became, and that's the only way. And that, going back to your first question, like that, you have to be willing to do that, or else you're never. Anybody can become adequate or average on anything if you're passionate about it. But to get to that next level where you're not average, you're something. You have that extra gear. To get there, you have to make personal sacrifices in your day-to-day life, or else it's not going to happen. If you're a guy who says, "No, I want to do it all. I want to play tennis. I want to whatever, hang out at the bar with my friends and be a professional musician." Well, pick one because you can't have all three. So I think my advice to young people is, if you really mean it, you'll have no. It won't bother you to stay inside and play guitar while you see your friends outside. And if that does bother you, it's probably not the right choice for you.
So are we talking like 8-10 hours a day of practice for that 2 years straight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly, I mean, every day would be different, maybe there'd be days where I'd play more than others, or I'd be inspired. And there were always those days, and I still have these days where you're not feeling it at all. There are plenty of days where I don't pick up the instrument. And I know that sounds weird because this is what I do for a living. And but there are days where I come, like when I come back from a long tour, sometimes I purposely turn that part of my life off. I don't even take the guitars out of their cases. Maybe I'll go on a hike. I'll go to the beach. I'll go on a road trip because I just played for 90 days straight, all over the world every night for 2.5 hours. So sometimes there are days where I can't take any more guitar, But as a kid growing up, yeah, it was a devotion, no doubt about it.
So were you chasing a certain sound from the very beginning, or a certain style?
Yes, but I didn't achieve it. See, this is funny. Like, I'm glad I actually have a platform now to address this, because this is something I want people to know and they don't know. So all the early footage of me from, before I was an adult, before the age of 18, people have to understand that, like, if you're a 13-year-old kid, and even if you have a sound in your head, okay, you're 13, you're not an adult, you don't have a credit card, you don't have a driver's license. Like, how am I at 13, how am I going to really find that sound? I mean, I don't have, an unlimited budget. You know what I mean? Like, my parents are helping me out where they can, buying me equipment, whatever, when they could. They weren't rich. So people see my early videos and stuff on YouTube and go, "Oh, he sounds a lot like Stevie Ray Vaughan." I was playing a Strat, with some pedals into a Fender amp. And people think that I was going for that. That's just what I had. That's just what was available. This stuff that I'm playing now, this was not even in my purview of like reality. It just wasn't even, it didn't exist to me. And even if I did know about it, how am I going to pay for it? You know what I mean? Like, as a kid. So I always wanted this high gain, just balls to the wall sound. I always wanted that, but I couldn't achieve it for a long time. I played a Strat, and I was fighting it. I was always fighting that thing, man, because it had single coil pickups, which are thinner, and cleaner. And I always wanted a more heavy metal guitar tone. But it was only in the last maybe 10 years or so that I was able to make that actually happen, if that makes sense.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So this appetite for the metal blues fusion
goes way back.
Was it because you like those two genres of music and you were trying to draw them together?
Yeah, and credit due to my parents. I mean, my dad's vinyl collection, I actually need to ask him where it is, because it could be worth even six figures. I don't know, because my dad had first editions of Van Halen 1, Led Zeppelin 1. I mean, crazy, first edition, mint condition. So I grew up listening to it's now called classic rock vinyls, and just all the greats. Gary Moore, Still Got the Blues, Allman Brothers, Live at Fillmore East, Ted Nugent albums, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner. I mean, just anything that had lots of guitar in it, but plus, good songs, good vocals, whatever. That's what was playing in the house from the time my dad got home from work till the time he went to bed. So I had every night growing up, I had probably 5-6 hours a day of incredible rock music just being fed to me. So now that I'm an adult playing, that's the stuff I pull from. Those are the influences that I pull from on stage.
It's in you.
It's there, man. It's like, yeah, it's like born in, you know. And it's funny because I think that my dad, maybe my mom as well, I think they could have probably been musicians if their circumstances in life were different or whatever, and because they have a really, really amazing ear, but they don't have any, you know, ability to play. But I think they could have if they wanted to take that time. But no, but they got jobs and they did the, you know, the family thing, you know, and which is why I'm here. So
So that tone that you were chasing, do you think you finally found it once and for all, or you keep chasing it? It's kind of an interesting idea,
that is actually
right?
a tough question.
Like, do you wake up in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. and
No.
the sound's in you?
No, so that
And then
that
you
must
chase
mean
that down.
Yeah, it must mean that I've conquered that demon because I don't. You're right. Yeah, I don't have any like longing for something that isn't there anymore. Like I feel like I've really gotten it dialed into where, you know, I think the moment for me when I knew I had it was when other people started asking me for advice on getting a sound. That was the moment where it crossed over the threshold of like, we all see every musician, actually no, not even musician, anybody, no matter what you do, if you're a professional at what you do, there's that point where you're copying, and then all of a sudden you have your thing and others are now starting to copy you. So I think the moment that it hit me of like, okay, I've kind of found my sound is when I started getting messages and emails and phone calls and texts and whatnot of people asking about how to get my sound. That's kind of when the moment went, oh, I guess I have something here because people are asking about it, you know. And 10 years ago, I was the one asking. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think in the last maybe, if I'm really brutally honest, I would say maybe just the last like 5-6 years. Actually, I can tell you when it was. When I recorded, the album came out in 2018, but I recorded it the year before, in 2017, an album of mine called Polyphonic Prayer. That was the first time that I had a guitar sound that was new and unique. And from that album till now, that's when I started getting all these inquiries from fans and other players of like, how did you get that sound from that album on? So for folks who are listening to this saying like, I want to know where that moment was, it was that album. That was the album that the new sound emerged.
Yeah, that's what caught me. I was just swiping on my sort of search and I saw you and I'm like, what?
Wow.
You know, the tone and the sound
Yeah.
and the playing, it's like, it's just nothing like it in the whole world. I've never seen anything like it.
I mean,
it's incredible.
Wow. I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I am still, you know, to be a little bit humble, I mean, I am still definitely pulling from influences. You know, it's not that I'm completely reinventing the wheel. You know, Gary Moore, early Zakk Wylde, you know, Dwayne Allman. I mean, there's so many players that I still pull from. But it is a really amazing feeling that at 33, I'm getting messages every single day. Literally every single day from people who are asking how to get my sound or can you slow this lick down, show me how to do this. And that never used to happen. You know, before I was the one learning. And then now that people are learning from me, it is a cool feeling, man, because I've been doing this a long time, almost 25 years. And that's a long time to invest in one thing. So to have that feedback now, it's like, it feels good, man.
That's the gift.
It really feels good.
But you
because
earn that.
Exactly, and I like that feeling. I like the feeling of I've put in the time and I'm allowed to bask in this now because I've earned it. You know what I mean? Like if I was getting this kind of response after maybe 4 or 5 years of playing, I'd feel a little bit like, ooh, maybe there's like a novelty thing here, you know, but or like a gimmick. But I feel confident enough now that, and people know, you know, people know my history. People know about John Mayall and how I started, B.B. King, all these people that mentored me. They know that. It's all public knowledge. So I've never, in my whole career, I've never had anyone like try to discredit me or like question my record or you know what I mean? Like everybody's like, they know the pedigree of who put me out there. And that is what makes everyone just shut up. Like, so even the haters, the thing is, people ask me all the time like about haters. I'm like, yeah, but the worst I've ever gotten is people say, oh, I don't like his sound. He plays too many notes. He's too loud. They're right. I am loud and I play a lot of notes, right? But nobody has ever said anything like, oh, this guy doesn't, you know, his career, because they can't. because the history is there.
Can you dig into that a little bit? The pedigree, the people that pulled you in?
Sure.
The opportunity?
Yeah, so what happened, I grew up in the Philadelphia area, part of the area called Lehigh Valley, and it just so happened to be that in the 90s in that part of the country, there were just a lot of musicians because it was near New York. It was like people always say it was like a bedroom community of Manhattan. If you wanted to work in New York but not pay the rent there, you could live in this town I lived in called Allentown, which was, 45 minutes out of the city. So all these guitar players that were New York-based guitarists, during the week, they do local gigs in Allentown, right? Because it was, they lived there, they had houses there. So all these musicians would take me under their wing, like the older guys, They would see this young kid who was really passionate and really serious. And they loved it because they're thinking, man, I've never seen this before. They usually have, other older people coming up to them and asking about, playing and technique. And now there's this 9-year-old kid asking them for advice, and they loved it. So I got really mentored by those kind of musicians. And then the big moment for me that took me from a local act to a national act was in 2003, I believe. I got booked at a festival in Sarasota, Florida, and it was a blues and rock festival, whatever. And I was the opening act because I was a kid. I had the opening noon time slot. There was hardly anybody there. The festival just opened, so I'm playing for maybe 200 people, out of 20,000, right? But what was cool was the headliner of the night was this guy named John Mayall, who, for folks who know, say no more. For folks who don't know, John Mayall is a British blues icon that in 1966 was the first time Eric Clapton kind of became famous. So if people know the story about the wall in London that somebody sprayed painted Clapton is God, that was because of the John Mayall album that came out that year with Eric Clapton on it. So John Mayall became known for finding guitar talent. So there was Clapton, then there was Jeff Beck, then there was Mick Taylor, there was Peter Green, and all these people went on to have major careers, right? I mean, Fleetwood Mac, Jeff Beck, the Yardbirds, mega, right? So John is famous for finding guitar players. So the cool thing that happened to me on that festival, I'm on stage, and my attitude about it was okay, whatever, there's not many people here, it's the opening slot, kind of lame, but I had no idea my life would change because the headliner, John Mayall, he likes to get to places early and get the hotel keys and get the badges and things. So his tour bus pulled in while I was playing. And he pulled in behind the stage. So he can't really see, he just hears music. So the story I'm told is that he told one of his guys or his driver or something hey, hold on, I'm going to go check out these guys playing. So he walks around, and this part I do remember because I see him walking, and he's just standing there watching me, and I'm like this little kid on stage playing, and he's just looking at me like he couldn't believe it, And I come off the stage, my dad pulls me aside, he says, hey, John Mayall just asked me for permission to take you on the road all around the world. And I'm 13, the week before that I was worried about some a homework project or something, right? And now I got a living legend telling my dad, can I please take your son on the road? So, I don't know, about 6 months later or so, I open my email and there's a first class flight to, I think the first show was in Stockholm. So we flew right in for that. And then I rode around in John's tour bus for a year. And then I ended up recording on his 2005 album. I did all the guitar work.
Wow.
So, and then from that, so that was the moment I went from being a kid playing in my local pub scene, right, to within instantly, I'm now in a tour bus playing in cities that I had couldn't even pronounce. I'm we did a whole tour all over the world, Europe, everywhere. And so I'm a 14-year-old kid at this point, on stage in Stockholm, Sweden, playing for 7,000 people, and I'm and 6 months earlier, I'm playing in a bowling alley near my house or something, right? So that was the moment. That was it.
Crazy.
That was the big break for me. Yeah.
Wow.
So I still owe John. John is he's old now. He was. But what's amazing about John is he was actually, when I toured with him, he was already like in his mid to late 70s then, but the guy has, we always say he has like canine genes. The guy is an animal, man. He plays 3-hour shows and it's unbelievable. But I think he did his final tour this year. So I think he's like 94, 93, something like that.
Wow.
And he did his final
That's
tour.
crazy.
And unfortunately, I wanted to be there to support him, but I was touring at the same time. So I didn't get to be there to support him. But I owe the guy a lot because he got me out of, the only reason that I have an international career is because of what he did. So pretty wild. It's crazy.
That's amazing. So if I'm a young kid and I want to get the tone, is this how I achieve that?
It's one way.
Just go online and pick this up and I'm good to go?
It's one way. The funny thing, this is a great topic actually because this is a topic that, and it's the debate's going to go on long after I'm dead and everything. The whole topic of like the hands versus the equipment versus the cost of the whole thing of like, where does the tone really come from? And the thing is, a lot of people are afraid to just say the real truth, which is it's all of it. It's all of it combined. It's not, if you were to take one thing out of the recipe, the whole recipe changes. So it's the whole thing. It's the way my hands react to this gear. Because a great example I have is, I've become friends with some really amazing guitarists over the years, and a lot of them live near me in LA. And sometimes we'll hang out, and I've actually handed my guitar without, all the settings exactly like I use them, right? Not touching anything. Hand my guitar to another guy who's, a serious pro. And the guy plays a couple notes and goes, whoa, I can't work like this. Turn the gain down, turn the bass down, because their hands don't fit these settings. It doesn't work for them, right? So it's not just the equipment. It's not like, if you have a lot of money, you can go out and buy a tone. You can go out and buy expensive gear, but whether you're going to be able to get anything out of that, that's talent. You know what I'm saying? So I've seen a lot of guys that they have the money, and they can go out and they can have a wall of the best guitars, the best amps, but they can't really play. So gear doesn't make you a better player, but what gear can do is help you get your message across. Because all the licks and stuff that I'm doing are things that I've been doing my whole life. But the way it's coming across now through this kind of equipment is a more aggressive, assertive, brutal, in-your-face, heavy metal tone, as opposed to all the videos of me as a kid, playing more of a Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of sound. So
yeah, so
starts in the hands, though.
Yeah, this isn't going to fix bad playing. In other
words, correct. Because if I have,
So-
and actually, to be honest, This actually would make if you're sloppy. There's all types of bad playing, right? But one type of bad playing is the person that they can't articulate. That's a word guitar players always use, talk about articulation, because, you know, if you see, like, I have like a lot of stuff on 10 here. The amp is kind of maxed out, right? That's because with my technique, I'm always using my palm, and I'm always pretty aggressively, like, pushing my palm into, you know, this area, like between the bridge pickup and the tailpiece. And by doing that, it's what they call palm muting. And that prevents the amp from just like squealing, right, and making noise. Because when you have the amp dimed like this, it's a wild animal, right? It's a complete wild animal that needs to be tamed. And a lot of guitar players who don't have that technique of muting, they can't play it like this because it's just too much. They're like, whoa, 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 turn the gain down, it's too much. But for some reason, I don't know, the way I do my technique, I like all that gain, you know.
So would you recommend that someone dials in their playing clean and then move to tone later? So if you're at home practicing, you're trying to get
that's interesting.
Technique dialed in, make it as clean as possible so you can hear every mistake.
That's interesting.
While you're learning?
No, I guess my advice would be try it all. Like, you know, you know, every town has a guitar center, and every guitar center has a little amp room where you can close the door and go in there. And so if you're a player who's like, you have some chops, but you haven't really found your tone yet, take an afternoon, go spend a couple hours, try a bunch of different types of amps, right? And see which one puts a smile on your face. See which type of sound you feel articulates the best for your type of playing in your hands, you know, because it's all different. I mean, we're all so different. You know, the guitar is, I think, the most, out of all the instruments, the guitar is one of the most delicate when it comes to, like, because, you know, think about it. When you play piano, if I take my index finger and play a C note on the piano and then you do it right after me, it's going to sound the same. But if I play a C note, right, and then you play that same note, the way we attack it, the way the sustain is, the way the vibrato, it's going to be different. So guitar is very personal. It's an extension of the person playing it. So I would say my advice would be, yeah, take the time. Find your sound. Don't rush. Find it. You know, experiment. Yeah, put in those hours, you know.
So what about the basics? You think it's important to become brilliant on the basics, like the technique, like the scales, arpeggios, all the stuff that people want to gloss over?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I'm a bad example of that because I did it backwards. My first two records, no, you know what? No, my first three records, 2002, 4, and 6, I had no theory knowledge when I made those records. I had no idea what I was playing. I just knew what was right and what was wrong. But I couldn't tell you what it was. So it wasn't until my 2007 album called Feels Like Home, and that was the first album where I played the keyboards on the album. And so that was significant in my career, that record, because that record, I challenged myself to, you know, I was a guitarist. And I challenged myself to do all my own keyboard work on the album. And I'm really still proud. If you listen to, there's a couple of songs on that record that I'm still proud of. All these years later, I did a Donny Hathaway cover on that album called The Ghetto. And I played the Hammond organ solo. And I was only 17. But I still, if that song comes on in the car on shuffle, I don't skip it. I listen to. I'm still proud of that, you know, because I'd only been playing Hammond organ for 1 year at that point when I did that. So that was something I'm proud of. So for me, it wasn't until my fourth album that I really sunk my teeth into, you know, chords, theory, scales, and really knowing what I'm playing. Not just knowing if it's bad or good, but knowing what it is I'm playing on paper. So. Yeah, I'm kind of a bad example of that because I went backwards. I played first and then went back and learned, which is okay, I guess. You can do that.
Yeah, so when someone's first approaching it, maybe they look at it and it seems so big. Like they see you playing and they're like overwhelmed. Like, how could I ever get there?
Right. It's a lot of years.
Would you advise like just picking a song you love and pulling it apart, trying to figure out what's going on there?
So I'm an advocate of this. I think there's too much. There's way too much emphasis in the music world of learning other people's songs. Because what is that? Look, if you're a guy who says, no, listen, man, I want to have a day job. I just want to get a gig at the local pub, maybe playing some Jimmy Buffett covers or some, whatever, play some covers. Okay, sure, then learn other people's songs. But learning other people's songs is not going to make you a brilliant musician, because you're always going to be thinking in terms of what some other guy wrote. So it's better if you just learn fundamentals of music, right? And then start to form your own chord progressions and come up with your own stuff. I just think that learning other people's songs, I know guys like that, and they get stuck in that rut. They don't really have a lot of original thoughts because their formidable years or copying. I think if your formidable years on the instrument are spent copying, it's going to set you back. Just my personal opinion.
That's good advice. Kind of interesting advice.
I realize that somebody might hear that and say, well, yeah, but we have to start somewhere. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm not saying that anyone just picks up an instrument and has all brilliant original thoughts right out of the gate. We're all pulling from somewhere, but I just think that if your whole reason for picking up a guitar is to be able to play, entertain your friends with a John Mayer cover or something, it's like, okay, I get it. And if that's all you want out of the instrument, God bless you. But if you want to be like a really professional musician with a career, that's not the way to approach it. By copying just other people's work. So
the songs come to you like the groove or the melody. Does it come to you like in your sleep or when you're in the shower?
Yeah, sometimes.
Or do you sit down and you're like, oh, I'm going to write something in C minor, and you just work on it?
I don't do that, right? I don't ever, and any time in my life that I have done that, like any kind of like pressure situation where someone is telling me to write, it's never my best stuff. My best stuff is always completely organic, where maybe I'm just, at home. I'm sitting in a nice chair by the window and I'm playing just for my own enjoyment. And I always have my phone nearby, so I can put the voice memo thing on. Like if ever I'm grooving on something, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool. I immediately record. Because see, the mistake some guys do is they go, oh, I'll remember that. Nah, you don't. The minute you go have dinner, you come back, you watch TV, you forgot the riff. So I always make sure my phone is nearby, on a table or something nearby, to where the minute something sounds cool, I get it down. And then I can go back later and reference that, So it always starts with just an organic environment where I'm sitting down, playing for my own enjoyment, and I record a little voice memo on my phone, and then, maybe take some time away from it. Take a week away from that riff. Come back to it, listen to it in the car. See if it still holds up. And if it still does, then I work on the lyrics, So I think people need to, a big thing, man, step back from your work a little bit. Step back from your work. Don't go to the recording studio, record an album, mix it, master it, and send it into the label. Like that, like give it some time. Let your ears come at it with fresh ears. And I think that's a mistake I used to make in the past, is not giving my work enough time to breathe and then making changes or alterations, so.
So if I was like, hey, Eric, can we write a song in A minor right now? Would it fall flat, or wouldn't really work for you, right, that way?
Yeah, it would be a little too like under the gun, It would be. We could come up with something if you said, look, well, let's take 5 hours today and work on something in A minor. We'll come up with something. It's not going to yield no results, but it's certainly not going to be the most inspired. Like some of the songs that people like from me, that I hear people yell out in the crowd, or I see on Spotify are getting the most plays. I know for a fact those are the songs that they came about in an organic way. It wasn't somebody saying, "Hey, I need a new song by you by Friday." Nah, that's never. It's always organic, And I've learned it the hard way years ago. I've had, sessions with famous producers. I've had meetings with labels and things, and it's always yielded results that were very uninspired. So all the work in my life that I'm proud of is all very organic, very organic.
Do you feel like that inspiration comes from somewhere else?
Yeah.
Like it's received?
Yeah.
Like almost mystical?
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I think, like, for me, there are moments sometimes on stage even where, like, let's say you do a 35 or 40 show tour. out of those 40 shows, maybe 30 of them are good. You're proud of the work you did. The crowd loved it. The band was tight. You sang well. You played well. Good rapport with the audience. But there might be 10 of those shows that there was something higher. There was something in the room, on the stage, with the interaction, with the whatever, where you go, man, there's something going on here that feels a little bit out of body. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there are scientific explanations for it. Maybe it's, the sound in the room, or the acoustics, or somebody in the front row is giving you a cool reaction, whatever. But there are those moments on stage where you go, this gig is not like last night. This gig is something, there's something going on in this room that feels more than just human. It feels a little higher, like you're tapped into something. I don't know what that is. I'll probably never know, but there's that feeling sometimes. And I remember, just on this last tour, I remember in Barcelona, like I remember, the drummer was recovering from like a sinus infection. I caught his, so I'm like all doped up on cold medicine, and it was my first time ever playing in Barcelona. So I'm like, oh great, I got to go out there. I'm on all these drugs, whatever. And I go out there, and the vibe in the room and the people, it was just such a warm and loving environment that it was like the best show of the tour, And I thought it was going to be the worst because I'm not feeling well. I got a headache. The drummer was throwing up before the gig, and I'm going, oh my God, let's just get through this thing and get paid and get home. And I was so wrong, man. It was like the best gig of the tour. So sometimes these weird things that happen in your life behind the scenes, they wind up on the stage. It's weird, sometimes in a good way. Like that,
That's what makes it all worth it, I guess, huh?
Yeah,
those experiences.
Exactly. I feel like there were a lot of years in my career where I didn't really I didn't have any perspective on my own career. I think when I turned 30, I started to get a little more perspective on it. And now I'm at the point where I remember I even said this to somebody on the phone a couple days ago. I was talking to a friend or something, and I said something like, yeah, man, that last tour, man, I spent 90 days driving around with some of my best friends, playing in these amazing places and seeing these amazing towns and whatever. So it's almost like now I'm starting to get how cool my job is. And I know people might hear this and go, you didn't realize it before? No, I didn't. Because I think before, I always compared myself to other people or what they might have that I didn't have, or what my financial situation was at the time versus someone else. And I don't know, lately I just go, I look around and I go, man, I don't know anyone who has a life like this, where you're just, I'm 2 days now, I'm flying to Rome. And the guy tells me, the guy who's picking me up at the airport says, yeah, the first couple days, we're not going to work. We're just going to get acclimated. I'll drive you around. I got a Tuscan villa that I rented for you. We're going to get some videos with the gear. I'm like, this is not a normal life. This is not regular, right? And, standing on stage in all these exotic places, and I've played in castles. I've played on the top of mountains. It's just insane, some of the stuff I've been able to do. So I'm finally getting it. I'm finally getting how, for 10 years, people told me, man, this is so cool what you do. And I was like, yeah. Now I'm starting to get it, the travel and the cool things. It's not normal,
You think you could walk us through a little bit of your technique there with the palm and all that?
I can certainly try.
The special tricks?
Yeah. So,
I want to see how that works.
Yeah, so
let's get into that a little bit more.
No problem.
This
is the guitar nerd portion of the evening, and this I can get really into the weeds on this stuff. But so because, as we talked about before, because I have the amp set to just be maxed out. So I always no matter, even before I was using these, even other brands and stuff, I always have the amp just set to insane, and then I control that insanity from right here. This knob. This is the bridge pickup volume knob. And this is where it all basically happens, because a lot of guitar players, their problem is they always have the guitar on 10, and then they have, for their different sounds, they're clicking something, right? So they'll have their clean sound, right? And they'll click the patch or whatever for the clean. Guitar's on 10. And then without touching this, right? Still on 10. They click the second patch for their crunch or their lead or whatever. And here's the thing. That sounds very mechanical and it doesn't sound musical. It's very mechanical. It's like you hear these sounds being clicked in, right? Whereas the way I do things, it's all through this volume knob, so everything's gradual. So if I want a little bit of a cleaner sound, so I got my guitar barely on. I got it on like 0.5, right? So that's, kind of a clean sound, right? The guitar's barely even on. I mean, it's not even on 1, right? So let's say I want like, more of like a classic rock rhythm tone, more like like an AC/DC kind of Angus Young thing. Like, so not too much overdrive, but a little bit of crunch. I'll go maybe to like 1.5 or 2. So you see that what I did there was I went from kind of a crunch sound and then I rolled it down and you could hear the amp clean up. So you hear, what I love about using the volume knob instead of clicking a bunch of things is you hear the transition, which is very musical. So then let's say I want a little more, so that was the guitar on about 2. Let's say I want to go for more maybe like an 80s kind of tone, more like an 80s metal tone, like a Dokken, Whitesnake, Rat kind of thing. Let's maybe put the guitar on about 4 or 5, right? So that was about, I lied there. I went up to about 6 or 7 on that, right, at the end.
That wild.
So that was, a little bit more of a heavier tone, right? So then, of course, what's left is the full out, 10. But what people don't realize is if they come to see me, and we do a 2.5-hour show or something, right? I'm not on 10 all that much. Because 10 for me is only the guitar solo spot, right? It's only when you want everything possible out of the guitar, the amp, it's just full on. And it's cool because that gives you the infinite sustain thing where you want to hold a note forever and people go, wow, that's crazy. That's going to be accomplished by being on 10. So I'll go there for a second. you see, without having to click anything or look down at the floor or like, or touch something on my amp, like everything I did, the whole entire thing was just controlled by this one little knob right here. So that is actually my technique. That is it. I'm a volume knob player is what they call it. And it's where, like, when I'm playing, if you Google image search me, you're probably going to see in almost every photo, my pinky is like touching this knob here, right? Or I'm doing something because this knob is controlling the basically the output of the guitar, right? It's almost like I'm trying to think of an example. It's just, I don't know. It's just like kind of like how open or closed you want the sound to be, and it's all from right here. So that's my personal approach to it. For folks who maybe play in like a cover band or a tribute band where they have to sound like a lot of different guitarists, that's obviously not going to work. Then you're going to want multiple effects and different patches and things. But for someone who plays his own music, like I do, I can get 3, 4, 5, sometimes maybe even 6 different tones just from the volume knob, and I do the whole show I have no pedals on the floor. I don't have any, I don't step on anything.
What's going on up here?
Right, so we got, this is just a tuner. So that's one of those Boss Waza Craft tuners, which is cool. I pretty much only bought that one because the normal tuner is white, and I just wanted a black one, but I didn't realize that there's actually a lot of cool bonuses to this black one because the lights are green and blue, so way more visible on a dark stage than the original Boss, which is white, and it has, I think, like a orange colored light, so not as, the green and blue is really piercing, so I love that. This white thing with the 3 switches is actually, it's doing nothing. That is the foot switch that comes with this amp. And the reason why I have that on is because it activates the second master volume, which is what I'm using. But you don't really need that. That's not doing anything to the sound. Now, the next 2 pedals are doing something. The one here, the one right next to the white foot switch, is a Boss DD200 delay, which is a digital delay. Not the top of the line, which they make the DD500, but the DD500 takes up twice as much room, and it has settings and things I will never need. Because this is one thing unusual about my approach to guitar tone. I set a delay, and I leave it for the whole show. And a lot of guys would be like, well, wait a minute, don't you want to have different delays, like different times of delay for different songs? And the answer is yes, if I was using a lot of it. Because you never want your delay, like the repeats, the ba, ba, ba. If it's too loud, it's going to screw up your drummer, right? So if the drummer's playing, right, and he's playing in one tempo, and this is set to a different tempo, and you do like a break in the song, it's going to be like, out of time. But here's how I get away with it. I have the delay set at a volume that it's back there, you hear it, you feel it, but it's not so in your face that it's like making you lose the tempo of the song, if that makes sense, right? So I have it set to just like a basic analog setting. I use 400 milliseconds, which I just seem to like. And that's it, very basic, very basic. And it just gives you a little bit of you hit a note and, it gives you a little bit of that, it makes you sound like you're in a bigger space than you are. It makes you sound like you're in a big empty arena, but you could be just in a living room or something, So it's not too loud in a mix. It's there, and it's really cool for solos, because it gives it that more epic thing. Like that's way more epic than if I just hit the note and it just died, right? So that's kind of how I use delay, is more just as a light little thing in the background. And then the pedal next to the delay is it's an ISP decimator, and for folks who know what that is, it's a noise gate. And what that does is, if you see how loud I have everything set, whenever you're using an amp that has a lot of overdrive, and you have it maxed out like I do, overdrive equals noise. It's just the way it is. The geniuses out there nobody's figured out a way to get high gain without a little bit of hiss or buzz, right? It's just the way it is. So the way we combat that as guitarists is we get a noise gate, which means that when you're playing, it's not gating anything, right? But now we're sitting here talking, and it's basically dead silent. But if I want to play a note, right? So it lets the note through, but no hiss or buzz or unwanted noise. So that is it. That is the whole rig. And then if you see, it's just a cable that comes out of my guitar and just literally goes straight into the front of the amp. And I'm not even using, this is just the backup for the moment. But that's it. It's just this into a 412 cabinet. And yeah, it's as simple as it appears. You know, a lot of people have. It's funny. I read things like on gear forums about myself. Like there's people that think that there's something I'm running that I'm not telling people about. Like I've even heard somebody say, "Oh, he's probably got stuff behind the amp that nobody sees," and I'm like, "Well, go ahead, go look back there if you want. There's nothing back there, man."
Well, now everybody knows.
That's true. Everybody, yeah, exactly.
I gotta get me one of these.
Yeah, this was a cool collaboration.
This whole situation, man. Here.
It's pretty badass. It's pretty badass. Yeah, these guitars are great. I mean, this is
see what happens.
This is a collaboration that all this kind of happened almost around the same time. Like, so this company, this Nags Guitars, this guy Joe Nags, he was the guy that created the PRS private stock program. So folks who know PRS guitars, pretty famous brand. They have like their normal models that are, you know, affordable in all the music stores, you know. But then they have, of course, their super high-end run or line with all the, you know, with the bird inlay, all, you know, crazy wood grain, everything. And that's called the private stock edition. And Joe Nags, for 27 years, was the guy who was the president of that division. And around, I think, 2009... after like there was like the big recession and everything was crazy and I don't know the details, but I know that Joe Nags left PRS and started building his own guitars. And the first guy that they got was Steve Stevens, a famous guitarist from Billy Idol, great guitarist. He wrote all those songs, Rebel Yell, White Wedding. He wrote those. And then I was the second guy that they recruited years later. It was 2017. When they reached out to me. And how it started, because as we said earlier in this interview, I was a Strat player, you know. So when they approached me, the first phone call in 2017 was, they were like, "Oh, let's build you like your dream Strat," right? And I Peter Wolf, the manager of Nags, I said, "Let me stop you right there." I said, "I want to make the perfect Les Paul." And he said, "Oh, wow." He said, "I didn't expect that from you." He said, "All the videos I see of you, you're playing a Strat." I said, "Yeah, but that's because that's what I had, and it just, you know, was what it was." I said, "I want to make like a light, like a thick, you know, Les Paul, like a Les Paul, but I want it to be, you know, 2 pounds or more, 2 pounds lighter than a Les Paul. I want the G string, which is famous for going flat on a Les Paul, to not go flat. I wanted to correct all the little issues with Les Pauls, right?" And so we got together and started working on it. And
did they fix all those issues?
Absolutely. So this guitar, and they even surpassed my expectations. So this guitar is only 7.8 pounds. So I asked them to build me something. I said, you know, 8.5, whatever, that's cool. And they beat it. I mean, this is 7.8. And what's crazy is, it's you look, you know, you see it's a thick guitar, right? It's not thin. It's not chambered. There's no hollowing out. It's solid mahogany with a maple top, rosewood neck, Indian rosewood fingerboard. These are 2 of my signature pickups that I have with Seymour Duncan, which come in all my guitars now standard. Basic, you know, Tone Pros stop tailpiece. And yeah, and they made it 7.8 pounds, which I still can't even believe. Because when you're playing a long show, like I do, almost 3 hours sometimes, if this guitar were a Les Paul, it would probably be 10 pounds. You know, I mean, I've played some really good, like the really good, you know, VOS Les Pauls. Maybe they're like 9 something, but this is 7.8. So your back and your shoulders, I'm telling you, man, this having a light guitar like this, it's definitely a life changer. You know, because I play a lot. I tour a lot. I play shows, and I have, you know, a lot of times there's no days off. You know, so having a light guitar, it's huge, man. It's
You
huge.
got to save your back.
Absolutely.
Would you like to show us what that guitar is made of?
I certainly can. I'd be happy to. I actually, it's funny. This guitar at the moment, I don't even know why, but this guitar is in a funk. It's in C sharp standard. So if I play like an E chord, right? It's actually a C sharp major chord, but it's cool. It works. It showcases the amp really well to have all that chunk. So it's cool, you know. All right.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, man.
So, is there a right or wrong way to hold a pick?
Wow. Not right or wrong, but there are differences. There are differences.
someone intends
I've seen
to-
people do it this way. I've seen people.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I've seen people play it backwards. Actually, like they'll use the sharp end. They'll keep in. I've also seen guys use the side.
If someone intends to incorporate that heavy palm muting,
Yeah.
you got to have that thing under control pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so a lot of that stuff I'm doing where I'm doing like a chord and then muting and then back.
Sorry, back in on the set.
Yeah, no
But yeah,
worries.
just I'm curious, is there a right or wrong way to hold the pick?
I don't think so. I think if it's working, don't change it. You know, if you're getting articulation, if your passages are clear, people can hear the notes you're trying to play. It's not muddy or sloppy. Then it's working. You know, because I know personally for me that my technique is so personal to me that I think there is no like one size fits all solution. I think it has to be just because also think about it, the size of people's hands is different, where they have their guitar. This is one thing people don't talk about enough. Where they have their guitar strap. Like so obviously I'm sitting, so that would be the same for everyone. But when you're standing, there's like the Slash kind of guys who have it low. There's like the Alan Holdsworth kind of guys and it's up here in the chest, right? So all this stuff factors in, it's all part of the technique, where how long the guitar strap is and the string gauge, the string height. I think this is why this instrument is so popular.
Personal.
And so I think that if you look at all the technology that we have today, it's actually surprising to me that this instrument is still relevant. But I know why it's still relevant, because it's difficult and it's personal. So there's still people out there like myself who this is a challenge. It's like, man, this thing is so simple. It's wood with metal strings on it. And some people can make it sound fucking great and others don't, right? So that's why I think that's why this instrument is still popular, because people go, man, it's nobody's mastered it really yet. It's still, even the masters, if you ask them, they'd say, no, I wish I could have been even better, So I think that's why this instrument is relevant.
Yeah, I was thinking about Jared James Nichols. He doesn't even use a pick.
That's right.
Because he wants to feel it. I saw him in an interview. He's like,
yeah.
Hopefully I'm quoting him correctly, but
yeah,
he wants to feel the string. He wants to feel that feeling. And he's a big
guy.
He eats up that Les Paul pretty easily.
I know, it's funny. Whenever I see
it looks like a toy.
I know. It's so funny, man. I know.
But I love his playing. And I love that it's so unique to him. Like anybody that's unique to them and it's personal, like you said, that to me is what it's about.
Exactly. I don't think that technique can be taught, because I think technique has to be discovered by the person themselves, right? I think the fundamentals of music obviously need to be taught. Yes, of course, because that is not open. That is fact. But I think how you get there, it's I've heard this talked about in all sorts of arts, cinema, comedy, whatever. How you get there doesn't matter. The result matters, So it's some people's process is very, very it's all consuming and they're just emotionally drained. And other people, they can sit down in flip-flops and board shorts and play amazing stuff, and they don't even break a sweat, right? So it's everybody's process is very different, but if the result is great, it doesn't matter.
But get to the fundamentals as soon as you can. And then eventually you'll find your own identity. Is that the message? Yeah,
because I actually do regret that. I do regret that I made a bunch of albums before I knew the theory behind what I was doing. I was just lucky because I had a good ear, so I knew what was right or wrong. But I didn't But if I was like, if at that young of an age, if I would have been thrown into an environment where I wasn't the band leader and I was just hired to play with somebody, I would have struggled because I would have found my way in using my ear. But if somebody were talking to me, like if a band leader or whatever was saying, all right, so this one's in B minor, but we're going to modulate to the third, and then the sixth is going to be flat, I would probably just nod along and just hope that my ear could catch up, you see? But I mean, now I know what that stuff is, but back then I didn't. So, and there were times where I got away with it because I had a good enough ear to where I found my way in. And I still rely on that ear. You know, there's times where, you know, sometimes you do these festivals, right? Like a big one that happens every year is the Dallas Guitar Festival. And they always have all the big names, you know, Eric Johnson, everybody plays there. And I go there all the time. And, you know, they always have, what they do is all the artists who are on the lineup, they want us all on Sunday night at the end to all go on stage and play together, which is, in my opinion, is a little bit hokey. Because, you know, how great are 35 guitarists really going to sound on stage, all playing through different amps? You know, it's a bit of a, you know, a novelty thing, photo op, right? But I know that in those moments, we're all relying on our ear because who the hell knows what's going on, right? You got one drummer, one bass player, and 35 guitar players all playing over each other, right? So in those environments, yes, I still rely on my ear only because if somebody did call out a song, I probably couldn't hear anyways what they said or whatever, you know. And my keyboard work, again, was, you know, when I taught myself how to play keyboards when I was 17, it was only because I wanted to be the one tracking them on my album. So it was extremely personal. And I relied on that same ear again. So my ear has definitely, yeah, it's definitely been a big advantage.
Would you like to check out the piano?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That's actually, people don't know this about me, but I actually enjoy. See, guitar is what I'm known for. It's what I built my career on and my life on, and I do love it. But it's less of a challenge for me because I've been doing it a long time, and I have a lot of, I have just a lot of knowledge on the instrument. Piano and organ, because it's my second instrument, it's actually more enjoyable for me because I'm not as knowledgeable on it. So the challenge is still there for me, right? And that's why you'll see probably more smiles from me playing a keyboard instrument than a guitar. Because guitar for me, it's more of a rage thing. I'm more like, fuck you, man. Let me get as much out of this piece of wood as I can. It's more of a rage. It's more of an anger. But with the keyboard, it's more of a challenge. So yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
Well, let's check it out. We have a keyboard over here. Let's do it.
as a guitar player. I've built my life around it, my career around it, and I do have, an infinite love for the guitar. But something about piano, and even more specifically Hammond organ, something about those instruments has always drawn me in. And in 2007, I was doing an album called Feels Like Home, and I was, this close to hiring, a professional keyboard player to come in on that record. And we had no time, no deadline, no rush. So I challenged myself that year of 2007 to see if I could do it myself and see if I could avoid having to call someone in. And so I devoted that entire year to just transposing everything I knew from music in general and the guitar onto the piano. And I did. And from that point forward, I have been the keyboard player on all of my solo records, and I've even done some sessions for other people as keyboard players. So it's certainly not. I'm not the most proficient on this instrument. It does feel like my second instrument in a lot of ways, but my passion for it is the same as the guitar, which I have made my whole career out of. So yeah, and especially whenever I find myself in situations like this where I'm in front of a beautiful piano, I always have to sit down and play some some gospel chords and things, and just let it flow. up there, right? Maybe? Yeah. I just, they lost it in, right?